4th anniversary dinner at Opal's Steakhouse, downtown Austin. White tablecloths, candles, the kind of place where waiters memorize your name and bring your favorite wine without asking. Marcus lifted his champagne glass. To 4 years, he said, and many more. I clinked my glass against his, smiling, thinking about how far we'd come since that first date at the taco truck near campus. The bubbles tickled my nose and everything felt perfect. Then he set down his glass and said he needed to tell me something. His voice was calm, almost clinical, like he was reading a quarterly report instead of sitting across from his wife at an anniversary dinner. I got a vasectomy 14 months ago, he said. I never wanted children. I just told you what you needed to hear so you'd marry me. My fork stopped midair and the couple at the next table went quiet. Our waiter froze 3 feet away, dessert menus in hand, clearly unsure whether to approach or retreat. 14 months. I'd spent 12 of those months crying over negative pregnancy tests, blaming myself, apologizing to him for my broken body while he held me and whispered that we'd figure it out together. And he knew. The whole time he knew. Let me tell you how we got here. 6 years ago, I met Marcus at a grad school mixer in a cramped bar near campus. I was finishing my landscape architecture degree, stressed about my thesis, nursing a beer I couldn't afford. He walked up with 2 shots of tequila and a grin that made me forget about deadlines. He was getting his MBA at UT, charming and ambitious, talked with his hands when he got excited about something. Our third date, he leaned across the table at a tiny Italian place on South Congress and said, I want the whole thing, you know? House in the suburbs, kids running around, Sunday dinners with the grandparents, family vacations where we complain about the drive but secretly love every minute. I remember thinking, this one's different. This one knows what he wants. Our wedding was beautiful. 300 guests at the Driscoll Hotel, crystal chandeliers, a string quartet playing during cocktail hour. His parents flew in from Chicago while my whole family drove up from Houston in a caravan of trucks and SUVs. During his speech, Marcus grabbed the microphone and looked right at me, his eyes glistening in the candlelight. I can't wait to watch you become a mother, he said, his voice cracking just enough to sound genuine. You're going to be amazing. Our kids are going to be the luckiest kids in the world. My mom cried. His mom cried. I cried. My dad squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, you found a good one, sweetheart. Everyone in that ballroom believed every word Marcus said. I believed it most of all. 18 months into our marriage, we started trying. The night I went off birth control, Marcus came home with a plastic bag from Target. He pulled out a tiny yellow onesie with cartoon ducks on it and held it up like a trophy. For luck, he said, grinning so wide I could see his back teeth. We hung it in the closet of the spare bedroom, the room we'd already started calling the nursery, even though it was still full of boxes we hadn't unpacked. He'd point out babies at restaurants while nudging me under the table. Look at those cheeks, he'd whisper. Ours are going to be even cuter. He forwarded me articles about the best school districts in Austin, highlighted the ones with good music programs because he wanted our kids to learn piano. He opened a savings account and showed me the screen. College fund, Baby Martinez. I took a screenshot of that account name and sent it to my sister Megan. He's so ready, I told her. I'm the luckiest woman alive. 6 months of trying. Nothing. I peed on my first test in our bathroom at 6 a.m., perched on the edge of the tub, watching the little window like it contained the meaning of life. One line appeared, not pregnant. I told myself it was normal. These things take time. My mom took 2 years to conceive my brother. Month 2, same bathroom, same test, same single line staring back at me like an accusation. Month 3, 4, 5, I started tracking my ovulation with apps, thermometers, strips that measured hormone levels in my urine. I set alarms on my phone for optimal times. Woke Marcus up on peak nights whether he was tired or not, feeling guilty for treating intimacy like a scheduled appointment. Babe, it'll happen, he'd mumble, half asleep, already rolling away from me. Stop stressing. Stress is probably the problem. Month 6. I cut out alcohol completely, even at happy hours with coworkers. Changed my diet based on a fertility book I found at Half Price Book. Started taking prenatal vitamins that made me nauseous every morning. I threw up before work, leaning over the toilet in my nice clothes, and told myself it would be worth it when I finally saw those 2 lines. Month 8. I started Googling unexplained infertility at 2 a.m. while Marcus snored beside me, his arm draped over my waist like everything was fine. I found forums where women shared stories of trying for years, decades. Some never succeeded. Some marriages didn't survive the strain. I cried silently, careful not to wake him, wiping my tears on the pillowcase. Month 10. I found myself standing in a Target, frozen in the baby section, holding a tiny pair of shoes that cost more than I should have been spending. A woman next to me had a newborn in her cart, this perfect little bundle making soft cooing sounds. She saw me staring and smiled warmly. How far along are you? I'm not, I whispered, and walked away before she could see me crying, leaving the shoes on a random shelf in the electronics department. Month 12. I finally made an appointment with Dr. Reeves, a fertility specialist in a medical complex on the north side of town. Her office had soft lighting and photographs of babies covering every wall, hundreds of them. Success stories, according to the receptionist. I tried to feel hopeful instead of desperate. She ran every test over 3 separate visits, blood work, ultrasounds. I set my napkin on the table, stood up. My legs were shaking, but my My voice was ice. "That's not a test," I said. "That's torture." I walked out, left him sitting there with his champagne and his excuses and his bill for two. I took an Uber home and packed a bag while my hands trembled so badly I could barely work the zipper. Drove to my sister Megan's apartment, walked through her door, and collapsed on her couch. I slept there for 3 days, barely eating, barely speaking, trying to make sense of something that would never make sense. Divorce papers filed by 9 a.m. Monday morning. Marcus didn't believe it at first. He called 17 times that day. I counted. Left voicemails alternating between confused and angry and pleading. "Babe, you're overreacting. Let's talk about this. Can we at least have a conversation before you blow up our whole life? You're going to throw away 4 years over a misunderstanding?" Misunderstanding. That's what he called 12 months of manufactured grief. His family rallied behind him right away. His mother left a voicemail that made me throw my phone across Megan's living room. "Jessica, I'm deeply disappointed in you. Marcus told me what happened. You abandoned him because he wasn't ready for children? That's incredibly selfish. He deserves a wife who loves him unconditionally, not someone who treats him like a sperm donor. Unconditionally." There was that word again. The excuse for everything. His father sent an email suggesting I needed professional help for my obsession with motherhood. His sister posted a quote on Instagram about women who only see men as a means to an end, with a passive-aggressive caption about knowing who your real friends are. Meanwhile, my own family was horrified. My dad drove up from Houston the day after I told him. He sat at Megan's kitchen table, hands shaking so badly around his coffee mug that I worried he'd spill it. "He watched you suffer for a year," Dad said quietly. "And he called it a test?" His therapist's idea, apparently. Dad's jaw tightened so hard I could see the muscle jumping. "I'd like to meet this therapist." The divorce turned ugly fast. Marcus's lawyer painted me as impulsive, emotional, incapable of handling minor disappointments in a marriage. They argued I'd abandoned the relationship without attempting reconciliation and demanded I pay his legal fees for wasting the court's time. My lawyer, Patricia Chen, had seen this playbook before. She subpoenaed my medical records. 12 months of fertility appointments, documented anxiety, prescription for sleeping pills I'd needed after the bathroom floor incident. She laid out the timeline like a prosecutor presenting evidence in a criminal case. "Your Honor," Patricia said, "my client spent a year in medical treatment for a condition her husband knew didn't exist. He watched her suffer physically and emotionally and said nothing. This isn't irreconcilable differences. This is calculated emotional abuse." Marcus's lawyer objected. The judge overruled and the divorce finalized in 4 months. Clean break, except Marcus couldn't accept it. First came the flowers, delivered to my new apartment, a small one-bedroom near Zilker Park that I'd chosen specifically because Marcus had never been there, had no associations with it, couldn't contaminate it with memories. The card said, "I miss us, M." I threw them in the dumpster behind my building. Didn't even bring them inside. Then the text from numbers I didn't recognize because I'd blocked his main one. "I've been thinking about what you said. My therapist agrees I made mistakes. I'm working on myself. Can we get coffee? Just talk? I need closure." Delete, block, repeat, over and over again. Then he started showing up at my job sites. I was designing a community garden in East Austin, a public project I was proud of, working with the city on something that would help people. Marcus appeared at the construction fence one afternoon, waving like we were old friends. "Just wanted to see what you're working on," he called out, big smile on his face. "It looks great, babe." My foreman, Luis, a weathered guy who'd been doing this work for 30 years, walked over to me with his arms crossed. "You know that guy?" "Unfortunately." "Want me to call someone?" I shook my head. "He'll leave." He didn't. Came back 3 more times that month, always with some excuse. Happened to be in the neighborhood, wanted to drop off mail that came to our old address, thought I might want to get lunch and catch up, no pressure. The 4th time, I called the police, filed a report, got a restraining order started. The officer who took my statement looked tired but sympathetic. "These situations usually escalate before they get better," she warned me. "Be careful." And that's when Daniel appeared. Daniel Torres. He and Marcus had worked together for 6 years at the same consulting firm, same division, same floor. They played in the same fantasy football league, grabbed beers after work every Thursday at a sports bar near the office. I'd met him maybe 10 times during my marriage. Polite nods at company parties, small talk at backyard barbecues. He seemed nice enough, but I couldn't have told you his middle name or where he grew up or what he cared about beyond surface pleasantries. 2 weeks after I filed the restraining order, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Jessica, this is Daniel Torres, Marcus's coworker. I know this is probably weird and I apologize if I'm overstepping, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. What he did to you was wrong." I told him that to his face. I stared at the screen for a full minute, trying to figure out the angle. There had to be some kind of angle. "How did you get my number?" I typed back. "HR directory. I'm sorry if that's creepy. I can delete your contact if this is inappropriate. I just felt like someone from his world should acknowledge that you weren't the crazy one. I should have said yes. Delete my number. Leave me alone. Should have kept my distance from anyone connected to Marcus, but something about that last sentence got to me. "What did he say when you told him?" I typed. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. He laughed, called it a compatibility screening, said you failed. I failed. Something about those 2 words broke through the numbness I'd been carrying for months. I didn't realize I was crying until my phone phone screen got blurry. We met for coffee that weekend. Neutral territory, a small place on South Congress, far from anywhere Marcus might appear, with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Daniel looked uncomfortable from the moment he sat down, kept fidgeting with his napkin, tearing little pieces off the corner. "I should have said something sooner," he said, not meeting my eyes. I knew he was acting weird about the whole baby thing. He used to make these jokes at the office about how you were obsessed with getting pregnant, how you wouldn't talk about anything else. I felt my stomach drop. Jokes? Behind your back at happy hours. I thought it was just venting, you know? Married guy complaining about his wife, but looking back, he trailed off, shaking his head. He told people I was obsessed? Daniel nodded miserably. He said he was worried about you, that you needed professional help, that he was trying to be supportive, but you were putting too much pressure on the relationship. He finally looked up at me. He was rewriting history in real time, and I didn't see it. I let that sink in. Marcus had been building his defense for months, maybe years, laying the groundwork so that when things fell apart, everyone would already believe his version. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. Daniel met my eyes and held them. "Because he's telling everyone you left because you couldn't have kids. He's saying you were mentally unstable, that he dodged a bullet, that he's the victim in all this." He paused. "Patricia Chen is my cousin. She didn't tell me details, attorney-client privilege, but she said it was one of the worst cases of gaslighting she'd ever documented. I thought you should know that some people believe you." We talked for 3 hours that day. Not about Marcus, mostly. About our families, our work, our lives. His parents had immigrated from Mexico when he was 3. His dad worked construction, his mom cleaned houses, and they'd saved every penny so he could go to college. He understood what it meant to build something with your hands. He asked about my project, listened when I explained the community garden design, asked follow-up questions about drainage and native plants, remembered the details a week later when he texted to ask how the irrigation system was coming along. We started meeting every Saturday. Coffee turned to lunch, lunch turned to dinner at a hole-in-the-wall Thai place he loved. We discovered we both hated mushrooms and loved thunderstorms and thought most superhero movies were overrated. 3 months after that first text, Daniel stopped walking on the trail around Lady Bird Lake and turned to face me. The sun was just coming up, painting the water pink and gold, and joggers were starting to appear in the distance. "I need to tell you something," he said. My chest tightened. Here it comes, I thought. Some revelation. Some connection to Marcus I hadn't known about. "I'm falling in love with you," he said. "And I know the timing is terrible. I know you're probably not ready. I know I'm the last person you should trust given how we met. But I couldn't keep pretending I just want to be your friend." The trail was empty around us. Just us, the water, and the birds singing in the distance. "I'm terrified," I said. "Of me? Of being wrong again. Of believing someone and having it blow up in my face." Daniel nodded slowly. "I can't promise I'll never disappoint you, but I can promise I'll never lie to you. I'll never test you. And if I'm not ready for something, I'll say it out loud instead of making you guess." I believed him, but this time, I made him prove it. We dated for 6 months before I let him meet my family. 6 more before we moved in together. He never pushed and never complained. He just showed up day after day, being exactly who he said he was. When Marcus found out about us, he lost his mind completely. 1 a.m. on a Tuesday, my phone exploded. 17 missed calls from blocked numbers, voicemails so angry I could barely understand the words through his screaming, something about betrayal and snakes, about Daniel being a snake, about how they'd planned this from the beginning. Then came the LinkedIn post. Yes, LinkedIn. Disappointed to learn that a colleague I trusted has been pursuing my ex-wife since before our divorce was finalized. Professional relationships depend on integrity and mutual respect. Some people reveal their true character only when they think no one is watching. HR got involved. Marcus was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. 3 weeks later, he was fired. Turned out this wasn't the first time he'd used company resources to harass someone. There was a pattern. The restraining order was upgraded. Judge added Daniel to the protected parties. Marcus moved back to Chicago. His mother's basement, according to mutual friends. He'd been telling everyone he was taking time off to heal from the trauma of betrayal. Daniel proposed on a Tuesday morning. No fancy restaurant. No champagne. We were making pancakes in our kitchen. The tiny galley kitchen in our apartment that barely fit both of us. Bumping elbows while we argued about whether chocolate chips belonged in breakfast food. "I want to do this for the rest of my life," he said. I looked up from the batter. "Do what? Argue about pancakes? Make breakfast with you and wake up next to you and build something with you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. Simple and perfect. "Marry me?" I said yes before he finished the question. Kissed him with flour on my hands and batter on my shirt and burned our first batch of pancakes because we forgot to watch the stove. We got married at my parents' ranch outside Houston. 23 people. My family, his family, a few close friends who'd stuck by us through everything. Megan was my maid of honor and cried through her entire speech. My dad walked me down the aisle for the second time in my life. And when he handed me off to Daniel, he whispered, "This one's real. No tests, no games, just 2 people promising to be honest with each other." The pregnancy happened 3 months later. I didn't believe the first test. Took 4 more just to be sure, lining them up on the bathroom counter like evidence. Sat on the floor, the same position I'd been in so many times before, but this time I was laughing. Daniel came home from work to find me surrounded by positive tests, still sitting on the bathroom floor, mascara running down my face. "Is this real?" he asked from the doorway. "5 tests can't all be wrong?" He picked me up and spun me around our tiny bathroom, both of us laughing like idiots, knocking a towel off the rack, not caring about anything except this moment. The due date fell right around Thanksgiving. Daniel's grandmother Rosa hosts a huge gathering every year at her house in San Antonio. 40 people, 4 generations, turkey and tamales, and kids running everywhere. We decided to announce the pregnancy there. 15 weeks along, safely past the danger zone, finally ready to share our news. What we didn't know was that Daniel's cousin Whitney had invited a +1, Marcus. They'd dated briefly in college, years before I ever entered the picture. Whitney had stayed in touch despite everything, didn't know the full history, thought enough time had passed for everyone to be adults about it. She was completely wrong about that. I was standing by the buffet table, loading my plate with Rosa's famous enchiladas, when he walked through the front door. Our eyes met across the crowded living room. His face went white as paper. I watched him take it in. Me, Daniel's arm around my waist, my hand resting on my stomach, the life he'd sabotaged, thriving right in front of him. Rosa clinked her glass before anyone could react. "Everyone gather around. Daniel and Jessica have an announcement." The room went quiet. 40 pairs of eyes turned toward us. I saw Marcus frozen by the door, Whitney tugging his arm, trying to get him to leave. Daniel squeezed my hand and smiled at his family. "We're having a baby," he said. "Due in April." Cheers erupted. Hugs came from everywhere and Rosa burst into tears. Daniel's mother started talking about nursery colors. His little nieces demanded to know if it was a boy or a girl, and Marcus stood there watching, face twisted into something I didn't recognize. Then he started screaming, "This is bullshit!" His voice cut through the celebration like a knife. Everyone froze. She was my wife. That was supposed to be my family. The room went dead silent. Rosa's youngest grandchild started crying. Daniel stepped in front of me, blocking my body with his. "You need to leave," Daniel said, voice calm but firm. "I need to leave? I need to leave?" Marcus laughed, high and unhinged. "You fucked my wife and I need to leave? We didn't start dating until a year after the divorce was finalized. You know that. Bullshit. This was planned. The whole thing was planned from the beginning." Daniel's uncle Roberto, a retired cop, started moving toward the door. 3 of Daniel's cousins followed, forming a wall between Marcus and the rest of the party. "You were supposed to come back!" Marcus screamed at me over their shoulders, spit flying from his mouth. "That was the whole point! You were supposed to fight for us! You were supposed to prove you loved me!" The room was dead silent. Even the crying child had gone quiet. "The test," Marcus continued, his voice cracking now, tears streaming down his face. "It was supposed to make you fight for our marriage. You were supposed to stay and prove it wasn't just about babies. But you just left. You just fucking left." I stared at him. This man I'd loved for 6 years. This man I'd trusted with my future. "You watched me sob on bathroom floors for a year," I said quietly, and somehow my voice carried across the entire room. "You held me while I blamed myself for what you did. And you're angry that I didn't fight for you? I was going to reverse it." His voice broke into a sob. "Once you proved you loved me unconditionally, I was going to reverse the vasectomy. We could have had kids eventually. You just had to pass the test first. You just had to prove you loved me for me." Rosa pushed through the wall of men, 83 years old, barely 5 feet tall. She walked right up to Marcus, looked up at him, and spoke in a voice that silenced everything else. "Young man," she said, "I was a family court judge for 40 years. I've seen monsters, real ones, men who hit their children, women who abandoned their babies in dumpsters." She pointed at the door, her finger steady as stone. "You're not a monster, you're something sadder. You're a little boy who never learned that love isn't something you test, it's something you give." She turned to her grandsons. "Get him out of my house." They did. The party resumed, quieter but determined. People kept coming up to me with hugs and congratulations, giving me the grace of pretending the scene hadn't happened. Daniel's mother brought me a plate of food and told me to sit down and eat something. Rosa found me later, standing alone in her kitchen, hands shaking around a glass of water. "You okay, mija?" "I don't know." She took the glass from my hands, set it on the counter, took both my hands in hers, her skin papery and warm. "That man has a sickness in his soul," she said. "And you, sweetheart, are exactly where you're supposed to be." Our daughter was born the following April, 7 pounds and 4 ounces with 10 fingers and 10 toes. My eyes, Daniel's dimples. We named her Elena, after Rosa. The nursery Daniel built himself over 3 months of weekends. The crib, the changing table, the rocking chair in the corner where I nursed her at 3 a.m., all handmade and all perfect. I asked him once where he learned woodworking. "YouTube, mostly," he said, sanding the crib rails smooth so she'd never get a splinter. "I started learning before I even told you how I felt. I wanted to build things for our kids with my own hands. Seemed important. He'd been planning for a family with me before we'd even talked about having children. Before he proposed. Before he told me he loved me. He was building furniture while Marcus was designing tests. That's the difference, I think. Marcus planned tests while Daniel planned furniture. Last I heard, Marcus is engaged again. Some woman he met at a conference in Seattle. I hope she's happy. I hope he's changed. I hope he learned something from watching everything he threw away. But people like Marcus don't change. They just find new people who haven't learned their patterns yet. Sometimes I think about that girl I used to be, crying on bathroom floors at 3 a.m., blaming her body for failing, apologizing to her husband for being broken. I wish I could go back and tell her the truth, that she wasn't broken, that she wasn't the problem, that the man she trusted was running an experiment on her heart. But maybe she needed to go through it. Maybe that's how she found her way here. To a kitchen that smells like pancakes on Saturday mornings. To a husband who says what he means and means what he says. To a daughter who will never have to wonder if parents wanted her. Marcus wanted a test subject. I wanted a partner. I finally found one.